It's to more easily exploit parasocial delusions on the internet. Okay, great, thanks for watching, bye! Okay, I'll put a little more effort into it than that. So I've been watching a lot of VTubers recently, and by VTubers, I mean VTuber. Singular. This one. This one in particular. I wonder why. Anyway, in case you've been living under a fucking rock, a VTuber, short for virtual YouTuber, is an online entertainer who uses a 3D rigged virtual avatar, as opposed to like their own face or a PNG. Virtual YouTubers exploded in popularity fairly recently, especially with Corona forcing a record amount of people indoors and giving them no outlets for entertainment or socialization other than sitting in front of their computers and watching someone else play Valorant or whatever. I, in particular, did not get into VTubers until after Corona. My first introduction to the VTubing genre was Genshin's infamous Giga Leviathan himself, Kanai-san, who to this day terrifies and confuses me. But these days, I dip my toes into the waters of the EN sphere. In particular, the recent debut of Luxium caught my eye on Twitter. Again. Wonder why that could be. And as I sat my ass down to watch a bunch of yabai boys making funny noises while playing Ring Fit Adventure or whatever, I was struck by a sudden thought. Why the fuck is this dude roleplaying a 400-year-old demon lord? For the blessedly uninformed, a Vocaloid is a voice synthesizing software typically utilized by composers to create original music with vocals without needing an actual person to sing those vocals. And yes, I know, this is supposed to be about VTubers, I'm going somewhere with this, okay? Shut the fuck up. Vocaloids represented an interesting sort of democratization of singing, for lack of a better word. In real life, while everyone can in theory sing, some people can't carry a tune to save their lives. In addition, posting high-quality voice covers on the internet does require a bit of extraneous equipment, high-quality microphones, sound mixers, etc, etc. By contrast with Vocaloid, all you really need is a computer that can run Vocaloid software and the Vocaloid software, which is a much lower barrier of entry. But okay, no, this time I actually am off topic. We're gonna switch tracks real quick. The real reason I want to talk about Vocaloids in this video was more the meta-narrative surrounding them. The first Vocaloid to achieve widespread acclaim and fame was Hatsune Miku, in Japan at least. In the West, she's she's not famous. People know about Miku. Weebs know about Miku. So Miku, of course, had a lot of fans, and these fans, as fans are wont to do, wanted to know more about her. The problem here is that Miku, sadly, isn't a real person. Krypton Future Media originally planned to market Miku to professional producers. Making Miku more palatable for mass audience appeal wasn't super high up on the priority list, at least not at the outset. So Miku was given a face and a voice, and that was basically it, even after she achieved widespread success. Her personality and the personality of basically all the other Vocaloids mostly seemed to instead develop from the mimetics of creation. Someone would read a personality trait into a Vocaloid in one of their original songs, that song would blow up and become popular, and by extension be viewed by others in the fandom, and so that character trait would propagate, absorbed into the amorphous, loosely defined meme body of Vocaloid fanon, that I'm not going to be touching with a 10-foot stick. So a few key insights here for our purposes. 1. People can and will connect with creators whose creations they love, regardless of whether or not that creator is, like, a real person. That doesn't matter. Human beings are social animals. We form social connections liberally and unconsciously, to the point where it's almost involuntary. And 2, there is an enormous appetite among fans for information about their favorite celebrities, fictional or otherwise, to the point that in the absence of a concrete personality or narrative, they will literally create one themselves. Or 2. Or 7 shit billion. So while Vocaloids were by and large a major success, there were many factors that drove that success that seemed largely incidental rather than being the result of Krypton purposefully manufacturing that success. Any creator using the Vocaloid as a medium, or drawing Vocaloid fan art, or writing Vocaloid fanfiction or whatever, was essentially doing a lot of free advertising for Vocaloids. The system was self-promulgated, driven far more by fan passion than it was deliberately pushed by Krypton themselves. But at the very least, the proof of concept is certainly there. There is a fairly large market for virtual idols, waiting for some enterprising media entity to find it. Which brings us, of course, to Kizunai is a virtual Japanese YouTuber created by Kizunai Incorporated, a subsidiary of the media startup Activate, whose chief product is, as far as I can tell, Kizunai. She wasn't the first entity to be a virtual YouTuber, but she was far and away the first entity to succeed massively at it, garnering a huge following from her debut in 2016 and holding the spot as the most subscribed virtual YouTuber all the way up to 2021. So obviously, Kizunai is not a Vocaloid. In function, Kizunai was basically a normal YouTuber. She'd post videos of herself doing covers of popular songs or doing let's plays, or what were basically vlogs where she would talk about herself or respond to comments and requests. Standard YouTube fare, really. What matters for our purposes is that she, like a Vocaloid, is a non-human entity that has a lot of human fans. So a bit of a step back. There are a lot of differences between the pop stars the Vocaloids were emulating and the YouTubers Kizunai was emulating. With musicians, the music they produce is their primary product. Their personalities and any such quirks thereof are largely secondary factors, not the main draw. By contrast, for YouTubers, especially ones of the flavor Kizunai was attempting to emulate, their personality basically is their product. And Kizunai's production team leaned into this pretty heavily. Where Miku wasn't given a defined backstory or personality to speak of, Kizunai had both. And while Miku was mostly limited to a strict onstage performer, Kizunai would oftentimes interact with her audience, fulfilling requests or responding to questions or comments or concerns. She'd do collabs with other YouTubers, even outright deny that there was any underlying person or management team behind the performance. They went to great lengths to give her the facade of a genuine independent being, ripe for the metaphorical parasocial picking. And in some ways, a virtual avatar is ironically kind of better for this genre of creation than an actual human is. A parasocial relationship like the one Kizunai created can be problematic for a real human, but for a made-up virtual avatar, a lot of the same concerns don't apply. For a real human being attempting to present themselves as authentic, there are a lot of privacy concerns. You have to worry about how much information about yourself you're willing to share online, whereas with a virtual being like Kizunai, who gives a shit? She isn't real. In addition, human beings' lives and existence aren't custom crafted to be appealing to mass amounts of people, whereas for a virtual being like Kizunai, you can just make up whatever backstory you want. You can be an AI that exists in the virtual plane only to create YouTube videos. You could be a vampire. You could be a 400-year-old demon lord. So an entertainer with a custom crafted backstory and personal details that doesn't have to worry about their own privacy and can share those intimate personal details about themselves at their own leisure. They are, in a lot of ways, the perfect YouTuber. And obviously, I don't know what goes on in the mind of Kizunai's production team, but this time it would surprise me if this wasn't intentional. So that's probably it. Vox Akuma is a Niji-sanji affiliated liver. Because of the nature of how these things work, Niji-sanji isn't transparent about their process of creating livers. They want to maintain the illusion that their livers are real beings, and if someone was running around talking about how they created all the livers, that immersion would be shattered pretty fast. But from what I can tell anyway, it sounds like the aesthetic and the backstory of the liver is created by Niji-sanji themselves, and then they scout for the performer to play that liver. So Vox Akuma is given lore because it's easier to foster a parasocial bond between a performer and their audience if the audience feels like they know that performer, and in order for that to happen, there has to be some concrete information for the audience to actually know. In addition, they probably want Vox to stand out from the rest of the streaming crowd, so they want to give him something that's distinct. It's hard for me to imagine that optics don't factor into it. The idea that he is an ancient, powerful 400-year-old demon lord is an interesting premise that will help draw in viewers, and then the illusion of his existence and backstory is used to foster a parasocial bond by making the viewer feel like they really know the streamer, thereby keeping them watching. Though, on the other hand, most of the time, media trends are created by people first and then hijacked by corporations looking to sell you their products. Think brands making epic Twitter clapbacks for clout or whatever. But VTubing is probably one of the few media trends that I've seen that goes the other way around. The earliest success was manufactured by a corporation, and then it became popularized among lay individuals. And this is where the comparison to Vocaloids return. I mentioned earlier that the barrier to entry for producing Vocaloid songs is fairly low. In order to become a VTuber, all you really need is a webcam, a 3D model that's been rigged and animated, and a computer. And while that's not an insignificant amount of overhead, it is achievable even for a hobbyist. There's no shortage of unaffiliated independent VTubers out there. And this is where my analysis kind of breaks down. Independent hobbyist streamers probably do not create their VTuber backstory based on optics. That's not to say that optics don't factor in at all, but if I had to hazard a guess, I'd say most of them probably just picked something that looked and sounded cool to them. I can sit here and talk all day about how fantasy sells better and about how the creation of VTuber personas is in service of optimizing for drawing in viewership, but it won't change the fact that ultimately, indulging in a bit of fantasy is fun, and that probably has way more to do with the massive influx of people role-playing vampires and demon lords than any form of angling for optics do. Ultimately, a VTuber model is a tool anyone can use to achieve any effect that they want it to have, so long as they have the skill to make it actually achieve that effect. The same mask that exploits parasocial delusions to try to sell products can also help a small independent content creator who's a little shy about showing their face on camera, or is worried about revealing too much of their personal information to their audience. And this is honestly where I feel a little conflicted. I see Niji-sanji affiliated livers liking art of themselves or leaving comments on the videos of clip editors, and I have to wonder, is this a calculated move to foster a parasocial bond and encourage the creation of more content that can serve as free advertising a la Vocaloids, or is this person just genuinely flattered? How much control over their livers' actions do individual performers have? Compared to say Kizunai, Niji livers certainly seem like they have a lot more control over the type of content they're producing. The nature of live streaming and the sheer volume of livers being managed by Niji-sanji probably makes it a bit harder to moderate the sort of content being produced at the same level that Kizuna's channel did. But it's sort of impossible to know for sure. The performance of livers like Vox Akuma, their behavior on streams, their interactions on Twitter, their stories about their lives, all of that feels genuine to me, but how much of it actually is genuine? Where does the facade of individuality end and the underlying reality of the person behind the performance begin? And look, this isn't a video that's meant to like cancel Niji-sanji or anything. As far as I can tell, their business model seems to function basically like a normal talent management agency. They exchange resources and promotion and support services in exchange for the use of their characters, the performers getting to be affiliated with the Niji-sanji brand, and probably a cut of the donations. And assuming they aren't like abusing their performers or anything, I don't find anything particularly insidious about that. Frankly, there are a lot of advantages to the model presented by Niji-sanji here. Like like I said earlier, for a live streamer using their actual face and real name, privacy concerns become a real issue. There's definitely a real problem where viewers feel entitled to personal information on their favorite streamers, and while the use of an artificial face and backstory don't entirely get rid of those problems, they probably do help to some degree. And it can be hard for a single individual without any support to manage an entire community. There's no shortage of documented cases of harassment and doxing and swatting of streamers, having a pseudonym over a certain persona, having a dedicated team working behind the scenes as support. That all sounds like a fairly cogent idea. But I still think it's important to scrutinize the methods through which Niji-sanji achieves their goals. Clearly, the model they've developed here is a very effective and powerful tool, and like I said earlier, tools can be used to achieve any number of goals. And even though I don't think Niji-sanji does it, it's not hard for me to imagine someone weaponizing all these same factors in service of a more insidious business model. In fact, attempts have already been made. So why is Vox Akuma a demon? Realistically speaking, Niji-sanji is a business and their goal is to make money. Niji-sanji's business model basically relies on fostering an emotional connection between their streamers and their audience, and it would surprise me if the optics of Vox's backstory wasn't taken into account during its creation. But also, demon lords are cool. Indulging in a bit of fantasy is fun. VTubers are a lot of fun to watch. I am a fan of Vox Akuma, and despite my better judgment, a part of me wants to believe that Vox Akuma is a demon because whoever created him thought it would be cool.